All right, we are live. What's today?
Giving Tuesday.
Giving Tuesday, baby. So we have a special show for everyone tonight. Very, very excited. Beyond the Game pilot episode 6. I can't believe we're at 6 right now. We're moving and grooving. We're back at it on Tuesday night, getting going at 7:30. We have a short kind of pre-show. We're going to introduce a special guest that we have tonight, representing one of the best organizations in our opinion, especially in the sport of lacrosse. But it's taking flight nationwide, and it's a pretty impressive organization that we want to support. There's a goal that's being set for today, being that it is Giving Tuesday. Harlem Lacrosse, which is the organization that we are looking to raise funds for and promote and support, is looking to raise $10,000 today. They're at $8,000. So we're trying to get over the $10,000 mark, ideally before the end of the show. It would be really cool for our listeners to share this show tonight, to share the story of Harlem Lacrosse and what it's all about, and get people to raise money so that way they can do what they need to do to keep doing great things and make an impact on some people's lives. So it's an honor, it's a privilege to bring in Owen Van Arsdale, who is the Senior Program Director at Harlem Lacrosse. Owen, how you feeling tonight, my man?
Hey, Corey. Thanks for having me on the show.
Owen, where are you right now? Like, what type of space are you dialing in from right now?
I'm at our headquarters. We have a three-man office at a WeWork location in Harlem. We mostly work out of schools, but late at night, it's nice to have this space.
So those three guys, or if you got some ladies working in there as well, like, what do they do day to day at your headquarters in Harlem? Those three people.
Well, we have a rotating staff that kind of shares this office. So we have, really the people who drive the program at Harlem Lacrosse are the program directors, and we're a pretty flat organization. It's mostly program directors on staff, and the program directors are in charge of coaching lacrosse, obviously, but also running daily study halls, running tutoring sessions, having a daily presence in their kids' lives in the school, and just using lacrosse as a tool to provide academic, behavioral, life skills development for the kids in the program. So the program directors are the ones that actually carry out the product and deliver the services to the kids. And then we also have an admin team that's made up of our leadership team. We have a CEO based in Los Angeles, Mike Levin, who's done a great job leading our organization as we've grown so much over the last few years, and our regional directors who just provide support to the program directors. And then we also have a development team. Our development team's doing a fantastic job. We went from just a few years ago having under $1 million a year budget to now being over $4 million a year with programs not just in New York, but in 5 different cities. So it's been kudos to the development team for being able to raise all that money. And I guess it's salient tonight as we are hitting on Giving Tuesday, that they've done a great job pushing the needle towards our $10,000 goal. We're only $2,000 away right now.
Awesome. Frank, do we happen to have the Facebook page for Harlem? So here is where people can donate. So you got to do it through Facebook. That's important tonight because Facebook actually matches any of your donations that go on tonight. So that $10,000 mark, you can get there much quicker by going through Facebook. And they're actually doing that for a bunch of different great organizations. I think they're matching up to $7 million today for a bunch of great programs that are non-for-profits. So Harlem in particular, we're trying to get to that $10,000 mark. We're 2,000 away. So make sure to go right onto Facebook. If you just kind of search from Harlem Lacrosse, you'll see the donation button right there, right on their page. So kind of going back to Harlem Lacrosse and how it's structured, Owen, it sounds like the program directors are kind of the glue of the Harlem program. Talk about, well, I guess for one, I feel like the roles and the responsibilities of a program director seems pretty vast. It's not just like you're showing up and you're teaching and then you're also coaching. It seems like you're doing a lot more than that. What's your role in the organization? And talk about how someone can kind of wear so many hats in Harlem Lacrosse as a program director.
So I'm our high school program director in New York. We also have 10 other program directors that work at the middle school level. We actually started out as a middle school program, but each program director works full time in a school. So, for instance, in New York, um, we're in 6 different schools, and in each school we have a boys middle school program, and each boys middle school program has a full time program director that's responsible for the kids pretty much from when they walk in the door at the start of the day until a lot of times 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night when they leave after lacrosse practice, study hall, and tutoring. We also have 4 middle school girls programs in New York City. And my role is a little bit unique in that this is just our second year of trying to build out the high school program model. We've experienced some success working with the middle school students starting in 6th grade, and getting them to first of all, show up and then start to love lacrosse and then start to build in the academic and the behavioral expectations, continuing to use lacrosse as the motivation, and getting kids to show up to study hall and show up to school on time and turn in their work. So kind of driving that academic improvement during the school day is a big part of the job. I mean, that's 5 or 6 hours of the day. We're interfacing with the teachers, checking on the kids' grades, talking to parents about how kids are doing. And really for the 30 to 50 or 60 kids in each program, the program director probably knows them as well as any adult besides their parents. If a kid's having a good day because you're the first person that they're coming and they're sharing the good news with. If they're having a bad day because you're getting called into a teacher's classroom to try to handle the kid's situation, or they're coming to you with whatever they're struggling with. So then it starts to become a little bit of like a dean of students, sometimes bordering on social work, depending on the situations. And then after school, the only rule at the middle school level, the only rule to be a part of the Harlem lacrosse program is you have to show up to study hall every day. And if you do that, you get a lacrosse stick, you get to practice. And then there's some extra stuff that we do on the weekends, but really the meat of the program is what we do in the school during the day and in the school after the school day, when oftentimes the program directors and the kids in the Harlem lacrosse program are the only people in the building.
So it sounds like lacrosse is a huge part of these kids' lives, which I think is great. You're giving them an opportunity to play such an amazing sport, but it really sounds like the biggest motivating factor to get these student athletes to really excel in the classroom is the fact that they need to execute and do what's asked of them, during the school day in order for them to play lacrosse. Why do you have such a strong emphasis on these players showing up consistently to study hall and showing up to school each and every day?
Well, that actually gets us back to the roots of Harlem lacrosse a little bit. Our founder, Simon Cataldo, was a middle school special education student. They're a teacher. He had just finished college, so he was a year out of school, had no real teaching experience, and he was kind of thrown into the wolves. He describes it as having a classroom. He worked with 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders, a classroom full of students where some of them were so academically low that they couldn't read or spell the alphabet, and some of them were really bright but so behaviorally volatile that they just couldn't be in the mainstream classroom. So imagine a first-year teacher with no experience working with that, and then a few months in, he had the idea to take them outside and play lacrosse. And the stories, he had 11 kids out on the handball court. They fell in love with it right away. And then he started using that as a tool to get them to perform in the classroom. So shake his hand before they walk in the door, turn in their homework each day, stay in their seats during the whole class. And then each one of those things started to become tied to whether or not they would get to play lacrosse at the end of the day. And so our program kind of started as an academic first program where lacrosse is just used to get kids engaged, and as a way for, at the time, Simon, who is a teacher, but now program directors, to build a really close, tight relationship with the kids. They start to care about you because they fall in love with this game and they know that you can help them get pretty good at it. So you start to matter to them. And it allows you to form a relationship a little bit different than, it's hard for a middle school math teacher to build a really close relationship with a kid just by using math. A lot of kids aren't just intrinsically motivated to get good at math, but when you give them the lacrosse, they love it. And they just kind of gravitate towards you as their program director.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about your background, because you talked about how your founder, first jumped into the role of, being a teacher and a coach and a mentor at the middle school level for you, growing up, in Charlottesville, attending, the University of Virginia, playing lacrosse. Can you kind of just talk about your story and how your background and your experience has either helped you or hurt you or in any way impacted you to becoming a senior, program director for Harlem Lacrosse today?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Corey. And actually, it continues to be very, very closely tied to my experience as I continue with Harlem Lacrosse. But
pull up the picture, number 14.
I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. My father was an assistant coach on Dom Starzia's staff for the Virginia lacrosse team. So I grew up idolizing all of the kids on the team. They're like my big brothers, through the 2000s when they were winning championships and had some of the best teams ever assembled. And I got to be on the sidelines for all of that as a middle school kid, and got to know them firsthand and see kind of what it took to be a Division I student athlete, what it took to be a student at a place like the University of Virginia. And couldn't have asked for a better group of role models. And then obviously my father and Coach Starzia were instrumental in getting me, even before I played at UVA, getting me prepared to play there. And then through my career there, I learned so much from those two. And I don't think that, I give a lot of credit to them for helping kind of steer me, or, they helped lead me to the career path that I chose at this point. They mold young men. They kind of focus on the holistic. It's not just about lacrosse. I learned so much from Dom in the huddles at UVA, and some of the best connections I've had with my father over time was just playing catch in the backyard, or was lucky enough to be able to go play for him at UVA and play catch with him before games on Klockner Stadium. And those are some of the coolest experiences in the world. And I feel very privileged in a lacrosse sense for having grown up that way. And that certainly is one of the reasons that that drew me to Harlem Lacrosse, was that it's a way for me to give back a little bit of what I've gotten from the game. Again, coming from a unique situation where, John Christmas and Matt Ward and Kyle Dixon and Ben Rubio, all of those guys are like big brothers to me. I couldn't have had it any better. I couldn't have had an easier path to play college lacrosse. And then, compare that to the kids I'm working with at Frederick Douglass Academy, a public school on 149th Street in Harlem, where, if it wasn't for Harlem Lacrosse, many of the students and families wouldn't know what lacrosse is, much less have the opportunity to go visit college campuses and meet college lacrosse players, and have former college lacrosse All-Americans teach them at the sport, and have the opportunity to compete on club teams that, go play at the FLG Big Ten tournament or FLG in 3D in Maryland. And now at this point are becoming college lacrosse players. I don't know how off track I'm getting here, but do you guys remember Dajae Pearson?
Yeah, talk a little bit about Dajae and talk about his story and who he was and what he means to Harlem Lacrosse.
Yeah, so Dajae is our first Division I lacrosse player. He's actually playing football and lacrosse at Bryant University. But he was a part of our first club team at Harlem Lacrosse. And this is a kid who, he lost his father at a really young age, before he can even remember. And he grew up in two different housing projects, one in Brooklyn and one kind of up the street from FDA. And he's, one of the most amazing kids, such a big heart, so caring, hardworking, unbelievable athlete. But you only know what you know. And he started in 7th grade, and he recalls a trip, his team, this speaks to the power of these college trips that we go on. he tells me a story. This was from before I even knew him. This is 7, 8 years ago. Um, his team was going on a trip to Princeton, and he didn't have the grades to be able to go on the trip. And he considers that kind of the motivating factor in his academic career. So he went from a failing student to, starting to apply himself in school, show up on time, turn in his homework, do all of those things so then he get to be a part of things. He got to high school and had a little bit of a rough start, but started to realize that he really could accomplish some things through lacrosse. And halfway through his high school career, he kind of turned on a laser focus and just kept getting better and better, chipping away at his transcript. And he got to his senior year, and that's the first time that, I got to coach Daje at that point. We had a Harlem lacrosse staff member coaching the high school team at FDA, and he just took off. I mean, he was the unquestioned leader of that team. And then that summer before he was to go to prep school and do a post-grad year, he came out and played at the FLG Legit tournament. That's where he got found. And he was just he won every face-off that weekend. And every coach wanted to know who this Daje Pearson was. And then Mike Pressler called up at the end of the summer after Coach Starzia, actually, who's really tight with Coach Pressler, let him know about Daje because he'd seen him play in the spring. And Pressler calls me up and says, I want that kid Daje. I want him to be my captain one day. And it's just, for Daje to get from where he started in 7th grade, where he had to move neighborhoods because his mom was worried that he might join a gang, to then finding Harlem lacrosse and getting his, if it wasn't for that middle school intervention in 7th grade, he wouldn't have had the tools at the start of high school to start working on his transcripts and to get his grades up. And, you have all of these, that's kind of what Harlem lacrosse gives, is an incredible kid who's so motivated to do well. It gives him the tools. He didn't know some of these things just because, didn't have family that went to college and, whatever reasons we can get into all of that. But by becoming a part of Harlem lacrosse, he was able to have these opportunities that now he's a Division I lacrosse player at Bryant University.
You mentioned that Daje, he's a good leader. You talked about how the coach that was recruiting him and Mike Pressler want him to be hopefully a future captain for him one day. Can you talk about how he was a leader, not just on the lacrosse field and amongst his teammates, but within the community and the school that he was in, especially for the kids that were younger than him? Can you maybe touch on that or maybe share a story as it relates to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually practice on a handball court. There's a public park right next to school, and there's a huge concrete wall. People who've been in New York City know what I'm talking about. Right in the middle of these two kind of tennis court sized concrete slabs. So we have those two sides of the court to practice on. And so we can't have every program practicing every day. We have a middle school girls and boys team at FDA. We have a high school girls and boys team at FDA. And so the middle school teams will practice. The high school team doesn't have practice. But you'll see 20, 30 high school kids out there working with the middle schoolers, working on their own, playing their own pickup lacrosse games. And, those kind of environments where it's just up the kids left to their own devices, where Daje thrives. He's not the kid that's just going to be off on his own. Like, he'd be there helping the middle school coach his team up. He'd call the kids into the huddle. I mean, I remember this was just this past year, our high school team was playing in the city championship game, not having a great first half, and kids are yelling at each other in the huddle. And Daje's back. He had graduated at this point, but he's back at the game, and he came down to the field, got in the huddle, calmed everybody down, got people going, and we just, kicked their butts in the second half. As much a credit to Daje as anything else.
Sure. Talk about, lacrosse obviously isn't hugely popular in inner cities. You talk about it as a little bit more of a suburban sport. Kids typically a little bit more privileged, more middle to upper middle class. You're dealing with kids in a public school in Harlem, inner city, not a lot of field space. You talk about handball courts. You talk about, walls, brick walls. what do you guys use to make the players better, and how's your situation unique compared to maybe what other kids deal with on a day-to-day basis to get better at the sport?
Yeah, like I said, we play at the handball courts. I mean, there's a public park. It takes about an hour and a half either way to go. We take the subway and then we walk about a half mile to take the public bus over to Randall's Island and then walk around looking for an open field to play at. But we like just keeping the kids by the school because, one, then we can have study hall right after, and we like being close to the school and kind of staying a part of that school community. But two, we've found that the ball just stays in play because there's the wall and then fences on either side. So the kids are constantly touching the ball. It's really fast paced. It has to be small sided. We don't get to anything bigger than a 4-on-3 out there on the handball court. So, I feel like it's a lot of the stuff that you guys do at FLG with the small sided games, and you get creative, playing that way. And we've just kind of, adapted some of the box lacrosse drills and the small sided drills that we've seen, club programs like you guys running, and just, made it work out on the handball court.
How much of what you guys do, you as a program director, other teachers that you work with, some of the leaders in the Harlem program, how much of what you do is kind of just like a job? You go, you show up, you teach, you coach, you help, and you go home? Or how much of what you do is really like a lifestyle, something that is really a part of you, something that you're completely fully invested in, and something that never really leaves you? It's not like you kind of go home and you forget about it. How much of Harlem lacrosse trickles into your personal life and what you do on the weekends, etc.?
Yeah, I think every program director would tell you that it's absolutely a lifestyle. At least if you're going to do it well, it kind of has to be a lifestyle. And you're getting calls at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night from parents wondering where their kid is. And then you have all their best friends' phone numbers because they're lacrosse players too. So you're tracking kids down late at night. More times than not, they're on the handball court hitting the wall or playing pickup lacrosse under the lights, which I love, but you got to go home at some point. During the weekends, we work most weekends. We're taking kids, whether it's on a college trip, like this past fall, I took a group to UVA, my alma mater. One of our program directors took his group to Western New England, his alma mater. We have had visits to UPenn, Brown, Amherst. I'm not even going to come close to all the schools that have hosted us. And, again, credit to the broader lacrosse community for really embracing Harlem lacrosse and helping us, all the college coaches being so great. We'll go and we'll play pickup lacrosse games with partner towns, in New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Westchester, where we'll play like a mixed squad scrimmage on a Saturday afternoon and then have a pizza party. And, it's great for both sides. You have kids in the suburbs and kids from the inner city, and they're playing on mixed match teams. They're getting to know one another. There's been lifelong friendships that have formed. You got Snapchat and all that now, so they're all following each other and stay up with each other. Some of these trips are overnight. We play a lot of games on the weekends. So yeah, definitely you really got to be in it and kind of willing to do whatever it takes for the kid and at any time. Kids will call you, text you any hour of the day, any hour of the night, because a lot of times you're the one that they're looking to for advice.
Sure. Frank, do you mind pulling up that Facebook page one more time? So again, for Harlem Lacrosse on Giving Tuesday, they're trying to raise $10,000. So be sure to go on their Facebook page and donate. And a lot of the money, that comes in, especially, when they do fundraisers like this, it basically creates opportunities for these players in Harlem, especially being that, we're talking to one of the program directors from the Harlem area, and it funds the trips to visit colleges. It funds opportunities for players to go play at events, and hopefully allows them to get more opportunity to play, at a private school or even in college one day. So be sure to hop onto their Facebook page and donate so that way they can reach their goal of $10,000 tonight. Owen, I wanted to pull up a picture, which is the one of, yes, there we go, with the Harlem Lacrosse logo. Do you mind just talking a little bit about what this picture means to you? Talk a little bit about the man holding the lac stick in this picture, and then if you can just bring up the Harlem Lacrosse annual fundraiser and what it means to the organization and why you do it and the purpose of it, I think that would be great.
Yeah, well, Jim Brown, a lot of people would say was the greatest of all time, before he had that illustrious pro football career when he was playing both back in at Syracuse. He was we honored him at our annual benefit in the fall of 2017, so about a year ago. It was a fun role being his handler for the night, so ended up spending a bunch of time in the back room with him, just chatting about lacrosse. And he told me he loved lacrosse every bit as much as he loved football, which I thought was pretty cool. He looks like he could still run over a middle linebacker in the NFL. I mean, that guy is huge. Tried lifting him up off the chair, and he gave me a hard time. He said, "You got to lift harder than that, young man." But yeah, so him kind of being still considered maybe the greatest lacrosse player of all time, and an African American lacrosse player for Harlem Lacrosse was, and obviously to be, a celebrity icon, was huge for us to get that support from him and the recognition and the validation in what we're doing, that someone like Jim Brown cares about our mission. Took the time earlier in the day to visit one of our girls' middle school programs and talk to them and said some really nice words about them. But yeah, it's the last Thursday in September. We have a big fundraiser at Chelsea Piers. We had 650 people out this year. And we raise probably around 10% of our budget there every year. It's a really important event for us.
Talk about the reach of Harlem Lacrosse. You mentioned how you guys are growing. You started in Harlem. You obviously have your roots there. You're helping a lot of student athletes, boys and girls in Harlem. Where else is your organization, and how are you helping student athletes in those different areas?
Yeah, we've since expanded. It started in Harlem in one middle school. We've since expanded to Baltimore, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. We have over 20 full-time programs now. And we're kind of trying to scale up each city to get to, we're not all the way there in New York. It's the only place right now where we have a full-time high school program. We're working towards that in other cities. We want to have a full-time girls program too, in New York, but we kind of build out as the kids progress through the program. So, in New York at the start, we had a handful of middle school programs, and the kids would age up and they get into high school, and a handful of kids every year would go to prep school, and they had a lot of success at prep school. We help them apply to school, get full scholarships, and that's great. Those kids were kind of the top kids that have had a ton of success. We found that the rest went from having a full-time year-round, you have your program director at your disposal, you got practice every day, you have study hall every day, you have all these accountabilities in middle school, and you get on a pretty good track, and then you get into ninth grade where a lot of things change. There's a lot of new distractions, and a lot of the kids really struggled. So, our solution was to start a full-time high school program that kind of adapts and mirrors in a lot of ways the middle school program model. And we've had a lot of success doing it. In the first year, the average GPA of the team went up 10 points, just in that first fall of having that full-time support. Our first graduating class, all of the kids are either in college right now at a postgraduate school, or we have a kid working for Harlem Lacrosse, who's going to continue to pursue a college education, but doing a gap year working for us, which I think is particularly cool. Things are kind of coming full circle, where there's a kid that went up through the middle school and is now, one of the middle school assistant coaches.
So now's also a good time, just so you know, to ask some questions. So if anyone has a comment. Oh, yep, we have a question that came in.
Yeah, I actually have a question. Do you chart the success of the program so you can demonstrate to others who want to donate or looking for grants, can you track the success of the program? Can you like kind of prove it? And then also, do you follow a lot of the students who, graduate, go on to college, and then their professional careers?
Yeah, to your last point, we're just getting there where a few of the students that were in our very first program, so they were 8th graders when Harlem Lacrosse started, just graduated college and are on to their first career. So we're just starting to hit the tip of that iceberg. As far as tracking kids through middle school and through high school, yeah, so our kids have 100% on-time middle school graduation. You can see a bunch of the specific academic improvement and social emotional improvement statistics in our annual report, our impact report that's on our website, harlemlacrosse.org. But our kids, improve at a higher rate than their peers, Harlem Lacrosse kids compared to non-Harlem Lacrosse kids in each school. You have a higher average in each core subject for the Harlem Lacrosse students. And I think the coolest thing that we found is that each year that a kid is a Harlem Lacrosse participant, that next year their improvement increases. So it's like exponential growth over time. So in 6th grade, we might get a kid to be a little bit better than they were in 5th grade. And then in 7th grade, that improvement's a little bit bigger than it was that first year. So kids now who have been a part of it for 4, 5, 6 years that are sophomores, juniors, seniors in high school, they're seeing, some of them, they'll have a 10% jump in their GPA year over year. So yes, a kid who starts Harlem Lacrosse, there's an immediate academic impact. But as kids continue through the program over time, that academic impact only increases, which I think really speaks to the power of the program and the power of the model that we're adopting, where we give a kid an opportunity to start in 6th grade and they get that first lacrosse stick in their hands and they learn to show up to study hall and they learn to walk in a straight line and they learn to turn their homework in. And then by the end of high school, through all of that engagement with us and through the tools that they pick up along the way, they're ready to study for the SAT with us and they're ready to turn in their AP homework the next night. So yeah, academically, there's been a lot of growth in our kids over time. And then we also the kids take a survey at the beginning and the end of every year the survey kind of tries to quantify unquantifiable things like a growth mindset, or your ability to work well with others, or your sense of belonging to the group, your self-advocacy, and they kind of just self-report. And year over year, our kids improve. They improve at a higher rate than the group of organizations that participate, the average of the group of organizations that participate in this study. And again, to speak to the power of this kind of middle school to high school model, the high school kids at Harlem Lacrosse scored much higher than the middle school kids at Harlem Lacrosse. So that again speaks to the more time that you spend in the program, that improvement actually increases over time.
You mentioned how some of your better students get opportunities to get scholarships to private schools. Can you talk about a little bit, maybe by the numbers, how those students are kind of like what their achievements are when they get to these private schools, and then what's the impact of that route to getting to a private school and then eventually getting to college if you're a Harlem Lacrosse participant?
Yeah, so 80, I think that it's 80. It might be more at this point. We sent over 80 kids to private schools on full or close to full need-based financial aid. Every student who's graduated from prep school has gone on to a college of their choice. We had, not every kid has continued in prep school, but again, we now have this safety net where that's okay. Now they're back in the high school program at FDA and they're continuing with us. So it's not like a make it or break it kind of a situation where there's that kind of pressure on a kid. But there's been a really high success rate for the kids that go on to prep school. And now our goal is to have every kid that goes through the program, whether they're prep school or coming through our high school program in the public school, to within the year after they graduate to be enrolled full-time in a post-secondary program, whether it's four-year college, community college, postgraduate year at a prep school, or going onto the workforce. We want every kid to be launching into that next step in their lives, in their career, whether it's academic or their professional career.
Great. Again, if anyone has any last questions, this is a good time to ask them. I just wanted to pull up the Harlem Lacrosse Facebook page one more time so people know where they can donate today for Giving Tuesday. Harlem Lacrosse is looking to achieve their goal of raising $10,000 today, which helps with their operating budget to run a program and create numerous opportunities for their student athletes. I think they're a little over $8,000 right now, so hopefully getting to $10,000 by the end of the night. So, Coach Wink, any other additional questions for Owen here while we have him on before we wrap up?
Not a question as much as it is a comment. I've obviously experienced Harlem Lacrosse as a person who's been at their practices, been at their fundraisers, met the young men and young women that they're affecting, and I can tell you that it's working. We obviously believe in it. We know the product is working, and we also believe, the young men that are now in college, he's talked about Daje, there's so many young men and young women that are going to be going on to college. We also heard a young man speak 2 years ago who was or maybe 3 years ago at Haverford College, who was an absolute unbelievable speaker, and he was I think he was a junior or a senior in college. Very impressive what this organization has done for these young men and young women, and I hope people can donate. Donate $5. Donate whatever you can afford, but I know that it's going to a great cause.
All right, great.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Kevin Goshorn was a speaker. He was a senior at Haverford at the time. He was our very first program participant to go on and play college lacrosse, and he is now employed after graduating from Haverford. And we have a new a freshman currently at Haverford. One of his younger peers kind of followed him. And that's been a cool phenomenon to see, is that some of these guys that are having success are pulling up the guys that are coming in the next generation of Harlem Lacrosse right behind them.
Yeah, for those people that don't know it, Haverford College is an unbelievable school, and you need great grades to get into that school.
Yep.
So it's a credit to the guys and gals. We didn't talk a lot about the gals, but the gals are a couple years behind, and they're coming, because I've seen some of these young ladies, and they're quite impressive as well.
Owen, where can people follow Harlem Lacrosse and what you guys are up to, whether it be via email or through social media?
Yeah, you can follow at Harlem Lacrosse on Instagram and Twitter. We have a Harlem Lacrosse Facebook page, and to get some of the more, if you're interested in getting into the impact information, I'd encourage you to check out harlemlacrosse.org. And there's also space to, if you're interested in getting involved as a volunteer, whether it's coaching, tutoring, mentoring, helping in the college process for a kid, helping with fundraisers, harlemlacrosse.org. There's a portal there where you can indicate your interest in getting involved.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Owen, and your knowledge and your experience and sharing, what Harlem Lacrosse is all about. And we wish you the best of luck as you guys try to meet your fundraising goal today, and we look forward to supporting you guys, moving forward in the future.
Thanks a lot, guys. Mike, Corey, thanks for all you do for us.
No problem, man. Have a great night.
Have a good night, O.
All right, so that was Owen Van Arsdale, who's the senior program director at Harlem Lacrosse, and Harlem is an organization, that we're going to talk more about moving forward on the show. They're someone that we're really close with, and someone that we believe in. And then, being that today is Giving Tuesday, we thought it was a perfect time to bring on a leader within their organization onto the show. So, we'll definitely talk a little bit more about Harlem Lacrosse's impact as we move forward onto the show. And, next week we're going to continue with, some great content, and we're going to talk a little bit more about our guests that we're going to be bringing on to the show after the new year. We're now up to 15 people that 15 guests, 15 different shows, 15 topics that we're going to cover throughout the year, and that list is growing because more and more people are starting to understand the impact of what we're doing here, and we're going to talk about some great stuff as it relates to the sport, both inside and outside the lines. All right, so anything else you want to touch on before we cut it out tonight?
Just realize that you can make an impact in someone's lives, and I strongly suggest that you give back in whatever way you can give back, and this is the perfect day to realize that.
All right, awesome. So we hope everyone has a great night and happy Giving Tuesday, and we'll see you guys next week.